Welcome back, everyone. Chris G here, Hard Hat CEO, where we help you go from hard hat to the CEO in your business and get out of that swinging the hammer and pushing that broom. So today I got Kevin in the house. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm living the dream, my friend. Thank you again for having me. Let's party.
Yeah, Kevin, I think we ought to talk about the three things that's kind of keeping people back from scaling their business because
I
that's what
love
we
that.
talk about. I mean, you got to scale it to get to that CEO position and get out of that hard hat say. And I was thinking about this. You ever feel like you're just beating a drum? And that's every episode I might bring this up, and I don't mean it. Yes, I do mean it, but and y'all might get tired of talking about it, but I'm going to say it again. You got to delegate.
I was going to say to you in the beginning, I was going to say we can't anything but delegation, but it is. It's
You,
unreasonably important.
you got to get yourself out of the way,
Yeah.
and that's one of a guy's biggest problem. I say guy, it could be a lady too. It's a business owner's biggest problem, and doesn't have to necessarily be contractors. That's what we're talking about right now. And maybe it is sometimes the hardest thing for contractors because they have the knowledge to build or they started the company, and a lot of people start the companies, but you have the knowledge and the expertise in what you're doing, and that is a big thing to do, and not everybody's going to do it the way you want to.
Yeah.
And I was I think I'm doing my job. I was talking to one of my coworkers the other day, or whatever, my partner, and he takes care of part of the technology side. I'm not that person. And one of our workers was talking to him, and he said, "Chris, don't give a shit how you do it, and you don't care. Just do it and get it done."
Mm.
And that's right. I don't mean that negatively. As long as it's getting done right, it don't matter to me. I just want the end result. So make it happen and find those people that can do that for you. And that's really the biggest problem that they have out of everything, in my opinion. That's the biggest holdup. You know, if you brought it up today, and I think you'd agree with me, Kevin, that how do I trust people or finding people? I don't know
Yeah.
who.
Well, that
And
was
that,
that was a question I was going to ask you is have you always
and,
had such a good relationship with delegation?
oh, I like to delegate according to my family, but have a good relationship as far as no. Sometimes I call people out, and you have to sometimes. And once somebody takes responsibility, I expect them to take responsibility. And well, then someone said, "Well, that's not my job responsibility, or that's not my job." It's like, okay, I hear that sometimes. Fair enough. Then tell me before you take the responsibility on. Go find somebody else or explain it is your responsibility because I said so. But the point is, if you accepted it, I'm taking for granted that you have agreed to do what I've asked. I'm gonna go do something else. I shouldn't have to worry about that. And then when I find out it didn't happen, that really frustrates you,
Yeah.
and you lose confidence in people that way. Now, a good person, a good employee, not doesn't do some of that stuff on purpose, and they might have a very good reason why they didn't do it. But that's an open conversation, a good management, and a good leader will say, "Okay, I understand what you did, but don't do that again, or do it this way next time, or whatever it looks like." But you just gotta trust them. Um, Sometimes it takes testing too of that person. Uh, I've done that before. Give them a test and just see what's going to happen,
Mm.
and they don't even know it's being tested. But you're trying to decide in the future: do I give them something bigger, or is that somebody I can trust to do what I want them to do? Open communicate. Do they ask questions? I think that's important.
Mm. What happens
Um,
if it goes wrong? Let's say you delegate to someone and it goes wrong. What do you do? Do you obviously there's a leadership aspect in that, right? But like
yeah,
what's the process for you? You learn from the lesson. How do you
you
proceed?
learn from the lesson. One of the things we're talking about later in this episode is SOPs, standard operating procedures. Um, I think to a point you can get too many SOPs, and I mean that you can get bogged down in just writing documents and rules and regulations and all that stuff. But I think sometimes when it comes to training, for sure they come in handy and they're very important. And if you find something that you think is important enough that there's the way you want it done, or how it should be done, or in construction, sometimes you got people coming and inspecting your work, the county or the state or the city, and it has to be done a certain way. Maybe those things get documented on how to do it.
Mm.
So if you're being proactive, you do that SOP beforehand. And your question is, if something goes wrong, um, and sometimes that's just how it happens. It goes wrong because you don't think of everything. Then you decide, okay, well, here's how we need to do it next time. And you have that document ready so you can train somebody in the future if somebody new comes along.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully, either that person in your group is moving up in the world in your business, or, if they want to go somewhere else and improve themselves, I'm all for that, helping people move on. But you always expect somebody to come in that doesn't know, and you train them. And I think that's really the biggest way. The the other way is you hire those people that should know you don't have to train.
Mm.
Now they're going to cost you more, and we can have a delegation on what's better, and I don't have an answer. Sometimes I like having people coming in that from other places because they come in bringing other ideas, and then again, there's sometimes I like bringing new people up, and that I know and I trust, and now it's like I just need to expand them into what they're responsible for, or expand their knowledge base.
Mm.
So I don't have a preference either way. I think it really depends on the company and your philosophy and the position you're going to fill.
When does somebody know it's time to delegate?
If you're feeling well, if you can't work on your strategy of your business or growing your business, that's first thing. Second thing would be if you feel like you're being pulled in many different directions and you can't get everything done at once. And if you're a contractor and you're dealing with a painter who has a question, and a flooring guy who has a question, and you have to go between the two, and they're both calling at the same time, you get a headache, get stressed. But quite honestly, as a business owner, you should be delegating as much as possible
Mm.
right now. And that's hard to do, and that takes time and practice. I think some people are naturally that's how they work. Some people struggle with that, turning loose of things.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but as a business owner, it needs to happen for sure.
Is there a certain amount of money that needs to be made before? Like, do you?
Oh,
What
well,
what is that?
that's
What
number
is,
two actually is
okay.
cash flow and money management,
Let's do
and
it.
it kind of stops people from scaling. Is there a certain amount of money before you delegate? Yes and no. And I say yes, meaning you got to be able to make sure you have your payroll ready. But if you're costing your jobs outright and you have the jobs to do, then that should be baked into your cost of the job, and then you got profit on top of that. So that should be all kind of working as well as way in. So you got to have enough sales, and then sales needs to be your top priority to scale anyway.
Yeah.
Because without sales, you're not scaling. You can have all the team and the best team in the world, but no sales, no
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 money.
go, no money, no go. Um, and sometimes that's where you have to delegate something else so you can focus on the sales. That's growing your business. That's strategy. On bringing somebody in, you have to decide also where to invest that money. Is it better to improve the efficiency of your team that you have with either, say, software or hardware tools or whatever it is, as sometimes buying different materials that cost more up front, but they take you less time to do. Those are sometimes you got to make decisions on that, especially if you get the customer to pay for it, and you're offsetting the expense of, yeah, the materials cost less, and I'm doing it faster, so it's not costing the customer anything, but it allows you to expand your sales volume to shrink that overhead. And we can get into accounting all day long, but that's the whole point, having that built in to work on that and to delegate. I talked about cash flow. There are a lot of different things I personally do a couple of things. I've got a reserve that we just sit out there, take a little bit, and not everybody can do that over time. You can take a little bit of your profits, set them aside, and I'm just there. I have worked for companies. I've seen the companies do it where you can get a working operating loan.
Mm.
They're sometimes they're necessary. That's where you go to the bank, get some money to say, I'm not going to get a loan on that, but when I do need the cash, I got it available to me. And that's a operating loan. I don't like those because you're always paying interest, and interest isn't bad if it's an asset and the asset's paying for it. But if you're getting a loan because you don't have the money, that's what I consider bad debt. So, and sometimes it happens and it needs to happen to grow. But if you can get to a point where you get rid of that concern, it's a little easier on you too, that you got a little reserve sitting back there. It makes you feel better at night. And then you also work on not only the costing part, make sure you got all your costs involved with the job, but getting those draws, or either draws in advance of the work or a portion of that, built in, that you got a plan on that, or even negotiating your terms with your vendors. Now, ideally, you've got 30 terms with your vendors. You get done with the job, and within 30 days, and you get paid, and then you take that money and pay your vendors. Doesn't always work that way. This depends. What I'm going to say next, it depends on your business. As far as contracting goes, taking credit cards or taking cash via debit or credit cards, it's faster, yes, but also costs money. And depending on how big a job you do, it can cost a lot of money. I had we did a huge horse barn for a doctor and his wife, and big project. They understood teeth. They were a hell of a dentist, and they understood horses. They didn't necessarily understand the business of building stables and so forth. And I tried to help them, and I did. And I got to a point where it was been a long time ago, I was talking to the bank, and it's like, okay, hey, I need my draw. Here you go. Let's make this happen. Well, we got to get all this paperwork done with the customer. I understand. So I give it to you now. You got to give me a little time. They struggled and struggled. So finally, this was going in projects. And the bank finally told the owner, said, listen, we trust Chris, and we want to make sure everything goes straight. We're just going to give him the whole loan amount and let him manage it. You okay with that? And the bank's telling him that. They said, yeah. So they sent me $120,000 up front. Now, why am I telling the story? For one thing, is that people trust you, and that's nice. That doesn't always happen. Don't expect this story to happen. I don't expect it to happen again, but that's great that it did. But I took it through. If I took it through a check, I had to wait at least 5 days. If I took it through a credit card, which most credit cards can't be that big, but American Express does work that way. But they're going to charge you 3% on that money. It's 3% on anything, so it doesn't really. But that been $3,600 off the top of your bat. That's not going to your bank account.
Yeah.
So they wired it, and it came the same day. Woohoo! So that's cash flow parts, and you're always waiting on that damn check coming in the mail. I've had those before. It's in the mail. It's in the mail. Well, somebody's waiting for me to get paid. So, but obviously, we had those reserves back there that helps that. I also do not only reserves. I also do a escrow account. And I don't want my funds. I don't want to think I got more money in the bank than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So when I get those big checks, like $120,000, I put it in my escrow account, and then I pay bills out of it as they come in for that job. And I knew that it was always there. I didn't have the stress of thinking it wasn't there or I had to wait for it. So those are two, at least in my ways, those are ways to kind of manage that money. Two things to talk about with your accountant or your bookkeeper is your overhead expense. And we're not going that today, but that's one way to manage your money, to understand all that. And then talk about a cash flow report. That's kind of giving you the heads up of what's coming in versus what's going out.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a book/resource suggestion for cash flow? Strange question, but I had to ask.
No, that's a good question. I don't mean this to be smug, but no, because I've never had that problem. I don't mean it negatively. It's just numbers come naturally to me. And I've never had that problem. I've got a lot of books on other things I've read about that I struggle with, but I can't say that's been a problem for me. I'm sure there's books out there. Matter of fact, in the show notes, we're going to have a list of books. We'll look that up. How's that sound?
Right on. Perfect.
I'm sure there's some guys out there that do. And I've never been asked that question. That's a good point.
We like
So
books. We like books,
I do
right?
love books. I love books, and one guy told me, "So you like books?" I used to fly a lot and travel, and I read a lot of books. I said, "You don't read for entertainment. You read to learn, don't you?" I said, "Yeah. I figure if I'm going to read, I might as well get something out of it." And that's just one I've never really. I've we talked about cash flow quadrant before.
Mm.
That's more of a bigger picture, and I think you're talking about more of the
Yeah.
management of the rally. Really? Yeah.
The awareness. I think one of the most common things is people get into business that don't really understand business because they just love working with their hands and they love building. And it's like, I'm going to start a business, and then you wake up one day and realize you don't know how the whole thing works.
That's right, and that's why we're talking about hiring somebody that does.
Yeah, that's
Or
fair. Yeah, that's fair.
do what you love, and then turn over something that you don't know to somebody smarter.
Hmm.
I was Henry Ford was that way. He's one of my heroes. Henry Ford, he surrounded himself with people a lot smarter than he was,
Hmm.
and that's not hard for me to surround people that are smarter than me. So anyway, just knowing to do it and when to do it and who.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I promised three things. So I guess that last one we talked about a little bit about it was SOPs, but systems and resources. And I'm not here to sell software or anything like that. Software can help and do a lot of different things that can free up people um, to help you free up that time for your staff or even yourself so you can focus on scaling your business. Software can do a lot of online marketing
Mm.
or you program it once and let it do its thing and you make it maybe a monthly thing or um, Lord help me if we talk about AI, but AI can help quite a bit too if you train it properly and not even get into training. But uh, I've watched some of my guys train AI, and it's basically, in a nutshell, you're teaching it how you want it to respond to people. The AI is what else we got? Oh, referrals, invoicing, just answering questions like a chat bot on your website. That's
Mm.
just a simple one. And if you don't have a website, you need to have a website. But if you have a website and you have a chat bot, get one. They're not very expensive. They just a little thing down there, and a lot of people are used to them now, and they just pop up and say, "How can I help you?" And you just start writing, and some of that stuff's already pre-programmed in. You don't have to be there for someone. I talked about getting people in training, and that's important. But I've had to learn myself, and I hope this. You can't afford a human resource person, and you have to be, in my opinion, you have to be a rather large company with lots of employees to be kind of the benefit of having a resource person. Now, somebody doesn't need to be in charge of human resources in your company. I'm not saying that, but they don't need to be an expert. Hire an expert, contract it out, get somebody. Like if you do payroll and send it out, I recommend somebody doing having another company do payroll for you. They probably have some human resource other uh, contracted services they can provide,
Mm.
like a handbook or something like that that they do, and it's not very much. It's a whole lot cheaper than having a truly human resource manager on site in your company. But that's for you to decide how to do that. But I do recommend having something out there that keeps you out of trouble, especially when it comes to payroll or new laws. They've just passed a new one in Missouri, and I got my human resource people just text me or email me. I got the update saying okay, and it tells you exactly what to do. It's like all right, we're gonna go post this on the old bulletin board. And everybody's covered, and life goes on. But those type of things, you don't have time to be thrown with that, and it changes so often. You
Yeah.
know, that's one way of making sure you're in your good graces. I'm sure some of the employees will appreciate it. Some of them don't care. That's okay. It's just part of everybody being a little different. Last thing that we ought to talk about, and this is about scaling your business, is that the biggest thing is make yourself independent or make yourself scarce or whatever it is you want to call it, where you're not, people aren't relying on you because sometimes you're your biggest bottleneck.
Mm.
And if you're truly an entrepreneur or business owner, you've got other ideas, other things you want to focus on. And you don't have time to be dealing with the stuff that they can do with every day. And they probably do it more efficiently anyway. So make yourself scarce, trust people, trust your companies that you contract out, trust whatever, make you get your flat cash flow all straightened out. In my steps to be a CEO, cash flow management is very one of those steps.
Mm.
But while it's very important, get that team first, then you can focus on your money, get all that stuff straightened out. Then you can focus on being a CEO and then taking those other ideas you got in mind and either implement them in your own company or start another company, get it going. So, all right.
Give us a bonus. Give us one bonus.
Bonus.
I got to challenge you.
Okay. We've talked about in the past taking that money and investing in other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes that investment is three different things. It could be another asset, could be in other people, and then this one's not, I don't mean it's cliche, and I'm going to say yourself, but I don't mean by that, I mean your own company. If you look at the stock market and they talk about people buying back shares,
Mm-hmm.
you know why they buy back shares, Kevin?
Why do they buy back shares? Because they believe in the company more than any other company, is my guess.
Sort of. It's because they can't find any better place to put that money at the time.
Mm.
So if you can't find a place to put the money back, if somewhere better, as far as making more return on your money, they put it back in themselves. It reduces their liabilities. It increases their cash flow, in theory, for the company, and it gives them. They know they can calculate the return a whole lot better with their own numbers compared to somewhere else. And then that's why they buy back stuff. Now, when the market's really strong and they're finding a different place to put that money, then you won't see that as often. But that means the market's growing. So anyway, so my point being is other assets, other people to grow your business or improve yourself, however you want to do it. And then obviously invest that money in your business that you know that you get a return on.
It's a good bonus.
All right. So all that said, if you guys are out there and you're wanting to talk further about what we just talked about today or anything else for that matter goes along with your business, click the link below, sign up. It's really easy. Sign up for a conversation with me. We'll talk about your business and how to scale it or whatever else you want to do. You know what I don't say enough, Kevin, is hit that subscribe button and like and make this thing go viral. All right.
Rate it, all that stuff.
All
Share
that
it with
good
somebody
stuff.
who
5 stars. Hell, I don't care what
all
it
the
is.
stuff.
Push the notifications. Ring that bell. All right, guys. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next Tuesday on another episode of Hard Hat CEO.